We are starting a new teaching series this morning, and we are calling this teaching series Alive, Becoming All That God Has Called Us to Be. Did you know that God is calling us to be alive, to be alert and active, to be alive in the moment, to be aware of our surroundings, to be present and responsive? Do you feel alive this morning? In this new teaching series, which will take us through the entire season of Lent, we are looking at the Gospel of John. And in particular, we are looking at 7 events, 7 stories involving Jesus and some other people. We are looking at 7 miracles that John strategically places in his Gospel, although John doesn't actually call them miracles, he calls them signs. There are 7 signs that John strategically places in his Gospel narrative. And he forms his gospel narrative around these 7 signs. What's his motivation? Why is John doing this? Well, he tells us towards the end of his gospel. In John 20, verses 30 and 31, here's what he says. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. This is the purpose of John's writing. He carefully selects 7 signs, although Jesus performed many other signs. John selects 7 signs because John wants his readers to believe in Jesus' identity as the Messiah, the Son of God. And John does this because he knows that by believing in Jesus and by understanding his identity, we gain life, we become alive. There is life in the name of Jesus. And this life is about being fully alive in the present and eternally alive in the future. So John makes it easy for us. He tells us at the end of his gospel what he's been doing throughout the whole narrative. He's been focusing on pointing us to the identity of Jesus so we may believe in him and have life. And he's been doing the 7 signs that Jesus performed. See, the signs are really not that important in and of themselves. It's not about the signs. It's about what the signs are pointing us to. That's what's important. It's about looking at the sign and seeing how the sign is ultimately pointing us to our destination. So John selects 7 signs because he knows that the 7 signs will help direct and inform our faith in Jesus so that we can believe in Jesus the right way. That's the goal. So, for the next few weeks, we are going to use the 7 signs as a framework for our teaching. Each week, we'll look at a different story where Jesus performs a different sign, and that's going to be our overall framework for this teaching series. Sounds good? Sounds like a plan? Are you ready? Well, you better be, because that's what we're doing. Let's dive in. Today, we are looking at the first sign that Jesus performed, and it's turning water into wine. My text is John chapter 2. We are going to walk through this passage together and comment on some things that come out of this text. I am going to be reading from a New Revised Standard Version, so some of the wording and some sentence structures might be slightly different to what you have in your pew Bibles. The title of my message this morning is simply The Wedding at Cana. John chapter 2. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine when the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee. And he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Weddings are significant, big social occasions in any culture. Family, friends, many guests come together to celebrate the married couple. Weddings are a big deal. So it's important that everything goes according to plan. It's important that everything happens just right. Getting married is a big deal. I'm not speaking from experience, but I know for a fact that getting married is a big deal. It's not just showing up in a white dress or elegant tuxedo and taking a few photos and then going to a reception that usually takes either way too long or is way too short. Getting married is a lot more complex than that. And that's in spite of what Australia's most watched TV show these days is trying to communicate to us. A lot of preparation, a lot of thinking goes into making the wedding what it's supposed to be. And everything has to be just right. In the first century Palestine, in the Jewish community of Galilee, where the culture of honor and shame was a prominent social context, there was a lot of pressure on the families of the bride and the groom. There was a lot of pressure associated with hosting a successful wedding celebration. The wedding celebration, what we would call a wedding reception, actually went for 5 to 7 days. It was a serious party, nothing like what we do in Australia, I think. When I go to a wedding reception, I'm ready to get out by 10 p.m. But not these guys. They would celebrate for 5 or 7 days straight. And Friday was when the party usually picks up. Friday was where the party really starts. They get married on a Tuesday. Tuesday is the third day of the week. Sunday is the first day. Monday is the second day. Tuesday is the third day. They get married on a Tuesday. And then Friday is when the party really starts, when it's really coming to life, when it's really picking up. But there was a lot that could go wrong, especially regarding catering. In this honor and shame culture, the pressure on making sure that everything was just right was enormous. Everything had to happen just right. Because if it didn't, well, that brings shame on the family. And nobody wants to feel ashamed. Nobody wants that. At the wedding in Cana of Galilee, the worst case scenario comes to pass. They've run out of wine. This is seriously problematic. You need to understand, in this honor and shame social context, this is a huge deal. What happens when there is no wine? The party stops. People go home. And they don't just go home and say to themselves, oh, well, I guess it didn't work out for them. That's fine. That's not a big deal. Maybe we'll come back tomorrow and bring some more wine to help them out. We'll sort it out. That's not a big deal. No, that's not what people do. People go home and they talk to their friends and their neighbors. Hey, guess what? I went to that wedding party last night and I was really looking forward to a solid 5 to 7 days of celebration. But before we even actually had a chance to properly celebrate, guess what happened? They've run out of wine. I mean, how embarrassing is that? They can't even hold a proper wedding celebration. Come on. Embarrassing. And you need to remember that this is not a large city where if you want to avoid your friends or neighbors, you just drive to another suburb and do your shopping somewhere else. This is a community that lives in close proximity and everyone knows everyone. So this is potentially a huge social catastrophe. This has the potential to be a huge social catastrophe and a massive embarrassment for these families. Now, Jesus' mother, Mary, she's not named in the text, but we obviously know from other Gospels that her name is Mary. Mary notices what happened. She's alert. She's attentive. She's alive in this situation. She's present. She's not just enjoying the party, having the last drink of her wine, bottoms up, drink it while it lasts. No, she's present. She looks around and she realizes that they have no more wine. The wine is gone. There is no more wine, and soon enough, other people will realize the same thing. So she's sharing with Jesus, with her son, what she's observed. She says, they have no more wine. We're about to witness an embarrassing situation. They've run out of wine. So notice that Mary is not forcing Jesus to do anything. She's not even requesting that Jesus performs a miracle on the spot or fixes this problem. She's just sharing what she's observing. She's just talking to her son. They have no wine. It's embarrassing. We don't know why there wasn't enough wine. We don't know what happened. Maybe more people that came to the wedding, more people that the host initially expected came to the wedding. Maybe all the guests started drinking more than usual. You know, that happens. Maybe it was a simple mistake and the host just miscalculated how much catering needs to happen. We don't know. We don't know what went wrong. But they have no more wine. And this is a big problem. Their reputation is on the line. Now, Jesus has a response for Mary. And it's a strange response. It's a response that's difficult to understand. And our English translations of the Greek text are not really helping us, I think, to grasp what's really going on in this interaction between Mary and Jesus. Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come. This sounds kind of cold, almost as if Jesus is rude to Mary, almost as if Jesus is upset that Mary is implying that he should perform a miracle or something, that he should do something about it, but his hour of doing the miracle stuff has not yet come, so why is she saying that? Different translations actually try and make sense of this and translate it differently. ESV says this, woman, what does this have to do with me? NIV is similar, woman, why do you involve me? New Living Translation is a bit softer, dear woman, that's not our problem. And the Message translation tries to interpret what might be going on, and it says, is that any of our business, Mother? Yours or mine? This isn't my time. Don't push me. So the idea here is that Jesus responds the way he does because he's kind of annoyed. He's kind of displeased with what Mary is saying to him. This situation is not his business because his hour, his time to publicly perform miracles and signs has not yet come. But then if you keep reading the passage, it's almost like Jesus does what a good son ought to do and listens to his mom and performs the miracle anyway. That's strange. In the Greek text, all we have is literally this. Woman, what to you and to me? And then follows what our English translations accurately present as my hour has not yet come. Woman, what to you and to me? I think what's going on is this. Mary notices the problem. They have no wine. She shares her observation with Jesus. And Jesus says, woman, what's that for us? That's not a problem. We can handle it. That's no worries. That's too easy, mate. If Jesus was Australian, he would say, that's too easy, mate. No worries. What's that for us? That's not a problem. My hour has not yet come. Jesus repeatedly talks about the coming of his hour in terms of his death. So for Jesus to say, my hour has not yet come, means I'm not dying yet. In fact, I'm just starting out. I've got time to do miracles. There will be a time when my hour will come, and there will be no time for miracles then, or maybe except the miracle of resurrection. But that's way in the future. This is just the beginning of Jesus' ministry. That's actually his first week. He doesn't even have all his disciples with him yet. He's got time. He's not dying anytime soon. So Jesus is saying, what's that for us? They have no wine? That's no worries. My hour has not yet come. We've got time. We can handle this. I've got this. That's not a problem. Let me share a story with you that might help illustrate this. This is a true story. This really happened. When I was a Bible college student, studying the Bible, because that's what you do in Bible college, I was very poor. I had absolutely zero money, nothing. I had to pay for my education, and being an international person, it can get quite expensive with all the additional fees and so on. You can't really work that much when you're studying full time. So I was completely broke. I was really, really broke. You know how sometimes people say things like, we are so broke this year, we just can't afford holidays in Europe. We're just going to have to take kids to Queensland again. That's not the kind of broke I'm talking about. I'm talking about, do I buy food this week or do I buy petrol this week kind of broke? All right? Just want to clarify this. And I definitely did not have money to just spontaneously go out for a coffee or lunch with friends. One evening, after all the lectures were done, a bunch of students decided to go out for a drink and for some dinner to just a local pub that was not too far away from the college. And as they are discussing this, where should we go? Should we do this? Should we do that? I know I am completely broke and I cannot afford anything. So I'm just stuck in this situation trying to come up with excuses why I can't go. But you know what it's like with a bunch of friends. No, shut up, you're coming, stop it, no excuses. And they forced me to come. I had no choice. I probably had just enough money to buy a drink and a small dinner. We get to the pub, and it was one of those pubs where, you pay after you leave. So you sit down, you look at the menu, like table service stuff, right? You pay after you're done. Everyone is ordering drinks and food. It's a very festive atmosphere. Everyone's laughing. I look at the menu. I look at the prices quickly. I'm remembering my bank account and how much I've got in there. And I look at the things that I can get, and it's really close. I mean, it's just like, if I get these two things, I'm going to have 25 cents left in my bank account or something. It's really close, but I decide to order these two things. After we're done with the meal, it's time to pay. I come up to the bar, take my card out, pay wave it. It's declined. Oh, don't worry, mate. It happens sometimes, connection, internet stuff. Do it again. Okay. Pay wave it again, declined again. So I move to the side, trying to sort this out, look into my phone, go into my bank account. It turns out that they charged me for some account servicing fees. And now I haven't got enough money to pay for my meal. And it's kind of getting awkward. People are looking at me because I'm holding the line, sort of. The guy's trying to wait for me to figure out, to see what I'm going to do. People are looking at me. Is he going to pay? What is he doing? Is he paying? Is he not paying? What's going to happen? And in that moment, a friend of mine notices what's going on, and she's able to read the situation, And she comes closer to me and she asks, "Hey, is everything okay?" And I just whisper, I don't have enough money. And she responds, "That's okay. I got you. No worries. What's that for me? That's not a problem." And she takes the card and she pays for me and for herself. That's it. Done. Paid. I think that's what Jesus is doing in John 2. Jesus has the capacity to take care of this problem because his hour has not yet come. He has the time. So Jesus isn't passive. He isn't indifferent to this situation. He's not saying, well, why would I care? That's not my problem. It's quite the opposite. He's actually very present in this moment. He's sensitive. He's responsive. Now, Mary doesn't actually know what's going to happen. She doesn't know what's going to come out of this situation. She has no idea what Jesus is going to do. But somehow she's trusting that whatever Jesus does is going to provide a good outcome. So she says to the servants, to people serving at the wedding, "Do whatever he tells you." What happens next has a profound symbolic value. Jesus notices that there are 6 stone water jars which were used for ceremonial washing. Observant religious Jews would often participate in ceremonial washing. A few times a week, they would wash themselves in like a little baptistry, a bit like what we have underneath the stage here, actually. They would wash themselves a few times a week. It was like a type of purification ritual to be pure, a repetitive religious activity that would have to be done over and over and over, an ongoing thing each week. You never get purified enough to just be able to stop. You have to repeat it time and time again. It was a practice within Judaism. It was a ritual that devoted Jews would get involved in. And the stone jars that Jesus is noticing were used to fill that baptistry with water. So Jesus notices those stone water jars, and he gets the servants, the people serving at the wedding, to fill them up with water. They listen to what Jesus says, they fill them up, and then Jesus says, okay, now take some of that water and take it to the chief steward, or some translations say the master of the banquet, for him to try. Now, chief steward, or the master of the banquet, was usually a person that was a guest at the wedding. Sometimes it was someone that was paid to do this job. Sometimes it was a family member. And they were responsible for making sure that everyone was having a good time, that the party was going great, and that everything was going to go according to plan. So if there was no more wine while the party was still going, he should have been one of the first people to realize it. And it's quite likely that he did realize that it was what was happening, and he was in the process of trying to come up with a solution. That's why Jesus says to the servants, go to the chief steward and show him that there is a solution to the problem, that we now have wine. We've come up with a bit more wine. So the servants take the water from the stone water jars to the chief steward, and when the water reaches the steward, a miracle happens. That water becomes wine. And not just any wine. Not just $9 per bottle or whatever cheap kind of wine there is kind of wine. Don't ask me how I know what the price of a cheap wine is. That water becomes the best wine. The best wine. Jesus transforms a vessel designed for religious purposes into a vessel that helps to keep the party going. It's a sign that points us to Jesus, who is the Messiah. And Jesus is the Messiah who brings the kingdom of God that looks a lot less like a religious ceremonial washing and a lot more like a wedding reception where there is abundance of the best wine. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of his signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Jesus reveals his glory, his empathy, his beauty, by preventing shame. That's the kind of Messiah we need to believe in. That's the kind of Messiah the sign is pointing to. Notice one more thing before we move on to our conclusion. Notice how Jesus performs this sign. When Mary lets him know that there is no more wine, Jesus doesn't stop the party and say, okay, everyone stop the music, stop the dancing, everybody stop, listen. I got something very important to say. There is no more wine. It's kind of embarrassing. But do not fear, JC is here. I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to perform a miracle. Here it is. Fill those jars with water. Yep, no worries. Abracadabra, whatever. Here's a miracle. Now believe in me, worship me, I'm the Messiah. Who else can do stuff like this? That's obviously not what happens. What happens is the opposite. The majority of the people at the wedding don't even realize what took place. The servants know what happened. Mary knows. Jesus' disciples know. That's it. The chief steward, the master of the banquet, doesn't know what happened. He just knows there is more wine. Yay, party can go on, more wine. The bridegroom doesn't know. He was probably just dancing, having the best time of his life. There are a lot of guests, a lot of people that don't know what's going on. they are just benefiting from this miracle. Only few people know what is really going on. Only few people get this revelation of Jesus' glory, because that's how he reveals his glory, through that miracle, through that sign. As we finish this morning, allow me to play with the text a little bit. I'd like to encourage you to use your imagination a little bit. You have to work with me a little bit. Think of the wedding reception in Cana of Galilee as a metaphor for your life. People come to the reception at different times. Some are there because they love you. Some are there just for free food and free drinks. Some are having the best time with you. Others don't actually even interact with you that much. Various parts of the reception are great. Other parts are an epic fail. Some moments are touching, very emotional. Some are funny. Some are a bit awkward. There's a bit of everything. But at some point, the party starts to die out and you've run out of wine. And you've noticed that you have no more wine. And you don't want to disappoint people in your life, but you know that you cannot meet their expectations because you have no more wine. And soon enough, everyone else will notice that there is no more wine. And people will start leaving the party. And maybe they'll start telling others that you don't have it all together, that you're struggling, that your reception is just one big disappointment. Maybe you feel like this reception has the potential for a massive catastrophe. It's not going to be a catastrophe if Jesus is there. It's not going to be an embarrassment if Jesus is there. Why was Jesus at the wedding in Cana of Galilee? Did someone realize halfway through the party that there is no more wine and all of a sudden remembered that Jesus has power to do miraculous stuff, and they looked around and went, "Oh, where's Jesus? We need more wine." "Oh, he's not. He wasn't invited." "All right, well, somebody run to his house and get him. He needs to come and perform the miracle. Quick, get Jesus to the party. There's no more wine." Jesus was at the wedding because he was invited to the wedding. No one expected that the wine was going to run out. But Jesus was invited. And while he was there, he took care of the problem. He helped to solve the problem. And he helped to keep the party going. And maybe, just maybe, you need to make sure that Jesus is invited to your party, to your reception, to your life. Amen and amen. Stand with me. We'll pray together.